It's cold outside. There's no kind of atmosphere. I'm all alone, more or less. Anyway, that was enough of me singing. That was the first line of the theme tune to the British sci-fi show Red Dwarf. This is Easy Like a Sunday Morn. I'm your host, Shane Lockwood. This is episode 62, and today's the 5th of March 2017. In this episode, I'm talking about the recent Red Dwarf convention called the Smegheads Strike Back. It was held at the Grand Chancellor Hotel here in Adelaide, South Australia, on February the 4th, and I've just had to spend the last month finding the time to compile the notes that I needed to create this episode. Special thanks go out to Scott Liston at First Contact Productions and his wonderful volunteers and staff, including my good friends Adam Lonsdale and Kate Mandelov, for making the event special. The event had guests Craig Charles, who plays Dave Lister, Robert Llewellyn, who plays Crichton the android, Norman Lovett, who plays Holly, the ship's computer, and it turns out he's actually taller than me at 5'11". It had Danny John Jules as a guest who plays the cat on the show, but he had to return to the UK at the last minute as there was a death in the family. It was his father, I believe, but his family flew out here and we got to speak to him via a Skype call, which was hilarious as the other cast members jumped in and started ripping on each other with jokes and Chris Barry, unfortunately, has a fear of flying, so couldn't make it. Some dedicated fans brought along an on-screen uniform worn by the captain in the episode Hollow Ship. It was over 6 feet tall. There's a photo of me next to it on Instagram, which I should link to in the show notes down below of whatever podcast aggregator you're actually looking at, whether it's YouTube or whatever. I will link to that, and you can see how tall it is. I stand at 5'10", and this is well over 6 foot tall. There was a Herbalife presentation in the function room next door, being excessively loud for a Saturday morning, mind you. And this was the cause for a lot of comedy moments from the guests, and they were professionals and turned every little sort of flub into a laugh a minute kind of event. And they were very, very funny. During the intermissions between autograph signings and personal 8x10-inch photos with celebrities, they showed episodes from Series 11 and even an episode of a game show called Space Cadets, starring Greg Proops as Davros, who was a Doctor Who villain, Craig Charles and Bill Bailey. Bill Bailey has starred in a number of science fiction shows, including my personal favourite, Spaced. Robert Llewellyn came out and told us that it used to take 5 hours to do his Crichton costume and makeup, but now it only takes 2 hours to do and 1 hour to take off. He said that Doug Naylor has a false leg, which is a bit of trivia for you, and they also run a very tight ship, and Series 11 was under budget. They do get to ad-lib in the script reading stage, but once everything is settled upon, they stick to the script and then go to record. This leads to a whole heap of bloopers, which are called smeg-ups for the show, and they get released onto the DVDs and things like that. There's a smeg-up from the scene with the red Crichton costume that should be in the top 10 most hilarious scenes ever if it ever gets released. He said that the TV explosions are made with gunpowder and petrol, and the scene where the tank blows up the gazebo in episode Beyond a Joke didn't need added sound effects. It was the actual explosion being recorded on the footage. And the tank itself wasn't waterproof, so they got flooded, and he was waist deep in this tank and there's water rushing around his feet, but the guy driving the tank was up to his neck in water. It's a wonder he didn't drown. Lister's reaction to the double Polaroid scene is genuine, as someone behind the scenes had source photos of someone's actual genitalia from the camera crew and then pulled a sleight of hand trick to get Robert to hand the Polaroids to Craig Charles, who then saw what he wasn't expecting at all, and his reaction was real. There's apparently a scene in Series 12 that's very, very shocking. The entire cast agree that Series 12 is so much better than Series 11. I think I may have said that previously. Norman Lovett was very, very funny and made all sorts of jokes. He did a comedy routine at the Rhino Room on I think the Thursday before the convention. He was also rather profound and said while he was largely apolitical, he disliked UKIP and said, be kind to someone every day, talk to people, and help people when you can. And here is a mild spoiler. He also hinted that Holly, the ship's computer, returns in an episode of Series 12, which would make fans of the show, including myself, very, very happy. We've been waiting for that for quite a while, hoping and fingers crossed, because there was a bit of a dispute between Norman Lovett and Doug Naylor, and it was all down to when they were trying to make the movie. Doug Naylor had said to Norm, could you please put aside like a year out of your schedule while we make this movie? And then the movie didn't eventuate, so that's it. There was a little bit of bad blood there, so hopefully that's all been resolved and the team is back together. We have the entire Red Dwarf crew back together. How fantastic is that? So for those of you who haven't watched Red Dwarf, say since Series 6 or something like that, Series 11 goes back before that, and to have that feel of proper Red Dwarf again, where it's about the characters, not so much the adventures and things like that. So the show's really come back full circle, and it's back to where it should have been years ago. Craig Charles and Chris Barrie didn't get along at first because Craig was paid half as much as Chris, and apparently this caused a rift between them. But over the years, they've had to reconcile because they've had to work together for so long. One of the VIP ticket holders was a young woman with tattoos that weren't coloured in, and Craig Charles had made a reference to wanting to colour in with felt tip pens as a bit of a joke. Later, when I spoke to her on Facebook, she said she would have let him. Not to worry, they're both married to other people, but I thought it was a bit of a light moment. It was quite funny, actually. You had to be there, I guess. He also told the story of how in Gunmen of the Apocalypse, he smacked the backside of the horse that Chris Barrie was riding, and the horse took off into the distance. But the look on Chris Barrie's face was just pure anger, and Craig couldn't stop laughing. It truly was a fantastic event, and I have to thank Scott Liston and his team at First Contact Productions for pulling off yet another successful day. I think they did quite well out of it. I enjoyed myself. I think everybody had a great time with very few hitches at all. So congratulations, Scott. And I hope that you will do another one of these fairly soon. They do Doctor Who conventions and things like that as well. Do Doctor Who. Might have to grab that as a bit of a soundbite. What do you think? Do Doctor Who. The ladies over at Women Talk Sci-Fi managed to secure an interview with Craig Charles, Robert Llewellyn, and Norman Lovett for their podcast, and I am told that that will be available on their website in a few months, but after it's been edited and things like that. And that should be worth looking forward to. I will remind everybody once that becomes available. Finally, to end this segment about the Red Dwarf Convention, I have a little bit of trivia that finally puts an end to decades of speculation. And that is the origin and the meaning of the word smeg throughout the show. Craig Charles has confirmed what many have speculated, but others refuse to believe, including myself, that it indeed was short for the word smegma. Yes, I know, I didn't want to believe it either. He said he was embarrassed because the word is rather harsh to use as an insult. So that would mean that smeghead is a reference to, well, that's not worth thinking about right now. Anyway, that concludes the Red Dwarf segment of this episode, and now we return to our regular podcast material. Thank you for tuning in if you are a Red Dwarf fan and are listening just for this segment. I will say goodbye to you now and return to my regular listeners. Thank you for listening. And now back to our regularly scheduled programming. This is recorded on the 6th of March 2017 and is not edited. I would like to apologise for any sounds, copyrighted music or belching coming from my next door neighbour. I'd like to talk about the 50 weeks until awesome program that I started 43 weeks ago and have 7 weeks to go. It was a program that I thought I wanted to achieve a whole heap of goals, and I wanted to open it up to everybody and make things easier. So the idea was to take a really big goal and break it down into 52 or 50 chunks that you could complete every week and build up until you have achieved your goal. Now, it could have been weight loss, it could have been saving money. For example, if you save $10 a week for 50 weeks, that's $500. If you lose 1 kilogram a week for 50 weeks, that's a loss of 50 kilograms. That's quite a big lot of weight loss to achieve over a year for 50 weeks or 52 weeks or however you wanted to do it. It was 50 weeks until awesome because I'd delayed for 2 weeks in wanting to celebrate the anniversary of this podcast. But you can call it whatever you like. But set a date from a year from now and write down some of your bigger goals, and you break them down into bite-sized chunks, and every week you just keep a record of what you've done to move closer to that goal, and hopefully by the end of the year you will be achieving that goal. Now, personally, I wanted to do a whole heap of things, but my main focus was on weight loss. I started at 120 kilograms and I managed to go down to 102 kilograms within 6 months, and then I basically started to go back up again to 110, then down to 104, and now I'm back up to, back up to 110, now I'm back down at 109, and it fluctuates daily. But I've got another 7 weeks to go to maximize the effort and see if I can get underneath 100 kilograms. Now, I think that I can do that. It just takes a bit more effort and a bit more of a focus and discipline and things like that. There was sabotage from other people. There was sabotage from myself, a lack of discipline, a lack of consistency with exercise and things like that. But I factored that in because I knew there was going to be setbacks and things where I couldn't be exercising every day and whatnot, right? So that's why it's over a year. So you factor in your setbacks and things like that. Also, weight loss takes a fair bit of time to do. A lot of people are very impatient, so they'll weigh themselves every day. I've been told that weighing yourself once a week is more preferred, but focusing on the numbers is not the ideal situation. You want to look at things like non-scale victories, like how many belt loops you've gone down, whether you wear a lower size shirt. For example, I used to wear a triple XL size shirt. I've now got the courage to go and wear a double XL t-shirt. Now, your goals may be different. You might think, double XL, that's big even for me. But once again, your goals are going to be different. What else to do? I wanted to find actual paid work. I managed to work in a factory for about a week. The company needed a whole heap of stock to be moved very, very quickly, and for some silly reason they decided not to keep me on. They lied and said that I was still an employee, that they just had a lack of work, and I kept ringing the job search agency and said, look, what's going on, and they haven't bothered to ring them back or call me back, and they were looking for other staff in other areas that I'm qualified for, but my name wasn't being put forward for. And in the end, it just wasn't the job really for me, and I got to look on for bigger and better things. Last year, I had trouble lifting 5 kilogram dumbbells, and now I can lift 15 kilogram dumbbells, no worries. Still a bit, I've backslid a little bit with the weightlifting, so I'm back down to 10 kilogram weights just to build up my strength again. But I did get to that point where I could lift 15 kilograms, and I will get back there again, and I will be lifting heavier and heavier weights as well. I've learned a whole lot more about nutrition. I use a weight loss app called MyFitnessPal. There's other ones. Lose It is another one There's a whole heap of them. I find that MyFitnessPal has a bigger database. It includes a lot of Australian products. I don't know about your country. If in America it should. I don't know about the UK, but there's millions of people doing it. The reason you need a big database of products is so that before you go to eat anything, you can scan in the barcode and see all the information and say, oh, okay, well, if I eat some of this, is it going to put me over my goals for the day, my calorie or kilojoule limit for the day? And you do need to eat. You need not be afraid of food. You need to eat. You need to eat regularly and properly. I do not demonize processed foods. I do not demonize sugars and potato chips and all those sorts of things. Now, once you start learning how to measure calories and look at the dietary information, you will naturally want to avoid certain kinds of foods, but you don't do it out of fear, you do it out of a conscious choice. So you can have a handful of potato chips, but you're aware of how many kilojoules are in that handful of potato chips, and therefore you make wiser decisions, right? I used to eat whole packets of a chocolate Bavarian cheesecake, and once I looked up the information, how many kilojoules are in that, I stopped cold turkey. Now, this probably wasn't the best idea, but I know from my personal habits and who I am as a person, I cannot eat just a single slice of chocolate Bavarian cheesecake. It's a bit of a weakness of mine, so I don't bother buying it at all. And I haven't had it for over a year now, so I am proud of that fact. Also, one of my other weaknesses was chocolate-covered licorice bullets, dark chocolate-covered licorice bullets. They have to be dark chocolate. That dark chocolate is very, very addictive, so I had to go cold turkey on that. However, you shouldn't fear food. Food is an energy source, and if you're a bigger person, you still need to eat a certain amount of food. So eating certain junk food and whatever, you shouldn't be fearful of that. If you're eating that before, you just eat a little bit less, because those foods are very high in calories, which is why they seem to be bad, considered junk food. If you're eating those things now, give your body a chance to slowly adapt. So you might eat a little bit less of the junk food, still eat it, eat a little bit less, maybe incorporate a little bit more broccoli or vegetables and things like that, maybe switching certain meats to fish. So you've got that protein happening, but there's less fat and things like that. So there's just small changes, but over a year. And it becomes a lot easier that way, rather than having a massive shock to your system. And you'd be surprised how fitter you feel, how faster you can walk. I can now walk 10 kilometers without getting tired. I make sure that I was doing, initially I started off doing at least an extra 2 kilometers a night on top of whatever else I was doing. I was monitoring what I was doing on Runkeeper, but my phone at the time had a dodgy GPS, and now I've got a decent phone with a decent GPS, and I will be going on another walk tonight, but I can do 10 kilometers without getting tired. And you will see it that your friends that are married and they're not allowed to go out, and they're not allowed to go footy training, and they're not allowed to go exercise at night because they have to be home indoors with their wives and children and stuff like that, play the good father and whatnot, you will see their endurance levels drop because their fitness levels are dropping. A friend of mine is married, and he used to go football training, and his wife basically put the foot down and said, you're not going football training because you need to spend more time with me and the kids, which is fine, fair enough. But the counter side to that is he's not getting the exercise that he needs. So you've got to have a bit of a balance in your life when it comes to this stuff. But that's what I've achieved over the years so far, the 43 weeks. But we'll have an update with what's going on with the next episode. I want to send a special thank you to my Patreon supporters, Darren and Elvin. They provide a financial incentive for me to produce regular podcasts at a higher quality. They make low per episode donations in order to get their episodes early, and they are entitled to bonus episodes like a Christmas blooper edition that is scheduled for later this year, and it'll be filled with all my mistakes and swearing and whatnot. If you'd like to be a Patreon supporter, the website is patreon.com/ELASM. And even if you don't wish to, please visit the website. It's absolutely free to do so. And just to see how transparent I am with the donations and stuff coming to this particular podcast. As an added bonus, Patreon listeners get to listen to these episodes commercial free. What I've decided to do with any sponsorship deals that I get for the free show, the advertising will be at the beginning and at the end of the show, just to bookend the show. But I like highlighting local businesses that are interested in supporting the podcast. But I also find that advertising distracts from the core of what it is that I want to do here, and I think you as a listener may not enjoy that. So Patreon listeners do get the commercial free option, and it's only $1. It's only $1 per episode. How easy is that? That's pretty awesome. That's quite good value, and I think that most of you can afford $1 every couple of weeks or so. And I'm not uploading regular episodes at this stage, but I'm going to be moving into that direction. Anyway, for those of you who are hanging out, who have been listening all this time for something that hasn't been in this podcast for the last few episodes, and that is the code word. Now, for those of you who don't know, the code word was a little bit of interactivity on my part to let you be able to let me know that you've listened to the entire podcast episode, because a 30-minute podcast is quite long and it's quite time consuming for you guys. It's time consuming for me to be able to produce. So the code word for today is the word cheese. I may have used it before, but it's CHEESE, the cheese, the dairy food. I hope I haven't offended any vegans. It wouldn't be the first time that I've done that, but that's not my intention here. I want to thank everybody who has listened to the show and who has contributed to the show financially, whether through Patreon or PayPal. I acknowledge everybody that has supported me. If you want to support the show but you don't want to do it financially, I understand. The best way to do that is to leave a 5-star review on iTunes. If you look up iTunes on your computer, leave a 5-star review. I know a lot of you already have done that. It's easy like a Sunday morn, MORN, and use iTunes to leave a rating or a review. And if you leave a thumb up or click the love heart on whichever podcast aggregator that you're using, and even better still, if you could recommend the podcast to your friends, that would be absolutely fantastic, because I want to increase the listener base. If you are listening to this through a podcast aggregator or YouTube or things like that, I would suggest downloading a program called Stitcher. It's a fantastic podcast aggregator if you don't already have one, and use it on your mobile phone. I get a whole heap of statistics and things like that, which is another reason why Patreon funding is important. I can then pay Spreaker to give me the total statistics and things like that. But I want to see how far and wide I can reach, because I think that my number is actually higher than what the figures are actually telling me, but I don't know. I've got no way of knowing unless you guys contact me and give me feedback. There are heaps of methods to do that in the show notes, in the aggregator description box, whatever it is that it's called. Anyway, that's all from me this week for this particular episode. I do wish you the very best of the time in between then and now, or now and the next episode. That sounds better. I should have scripted this part. The first half of this podcast was scripted and edited very fine-tuned. Maybe a little bit over-edited, but I wanted to be perfect for the Red Dwarf fans, but I'm starting to ramble. I'll leave it here. Please take today, the rest of today, and the rest of the week easy like a Sunday morn. Anyway, that's all from me today. Look after yourselves. Bye for now.